anyway. He went in there and he mapped out the fatalities and discovered that it was all the people who were drinking from this one water faucet because it tasted really good. The water was really good there. It had a reputation for great water. It was great tasting, completely infected water. And cholera. It's hard to resist the great taste of cholera. So, but the thing is he describes London at the time, and he describes what a mess London was, how completely unsanitary. And you read that and you realize at the time it seemed like it's impossible to change the city to solve this problem. It can't be done. But they did it. Once they found out what was happening, cities were recreated. A sewer system was put into London. It used to be that London stank. You go to London and everything would stink. You couldn't stand it. If you weren't from out of town, it would just be a terrible experience until you got used to the stink of it. But now London doesn't stink. It's not. The first time I went to London, the only thing I knew about London from imagery was Mary Poppins, and there was like smoke and coal dust everywhere, and the chimney sweeps and all that. And I'm like, London's really clean. Wow. And I thought, well, of course it's clean. It's a modern city. But all I knew was from this 1800s idea of what London was. And so they've come a long way. They really fixed that problem. So that's an example of an unsolvable problem because they still have trouble with their sewer system and all that. But it's way, 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 way better than it used to be. So you read stuff like that, and you realize that masses of people did mobilize and did fix things. And then you look at your problem and you go, maybe the same thing can happen.
Well, and I think they're growing up in an era that they get completely better than us, just the access to each other. And a lot of the videos that we've watched, cells are used to help people connect to safety. And there's a whole bunch of ways, but I think that their means of connecting makes problems a lot more close to being solvable.
But it does. But here's my fundamental point. My fundamental point is that when you cope, I'm in the business of helping people solve the unsolvable problems. The business I am in is software testing. Now the problem with software testing is software products are so complex, they're so huge, that you can never completely test anything. You can never know that you've tested it enough. There's no way to know. There's no test, there's no formula that I can offer people. I'm hired by people who say, well, what's the formula? How do we know we've tested it enough? What numbers do I type into this calculator to tell me how many tests I need? There's no formula. There's no way to do that. Well, so how do we do that? Well, we have to manage this, we have to cope, and there's 100 ways that we cope with it. There's 100 suggestions I have, but there's no definitive solution, and there can't be. So what it means that you have to do is you have to pop up to a higher frame of reference. You have to think in a really different way. And the way that you have to think to solve problems like this, to solve the unsolvable problems, to do the impossible, is a way that is completely different from anything you're ever taught in school. From anything. What you're taught in school, you have things, teachers tell you things, right? And then they have tests, right? You have tests. And you might wonder, is this going to be on the test? Is this thing you're talking about, are we going to be tested on this? And then when they have a test, there's always an answer that's a good answer that they'll give you a high mark for. And you can predict what that's going to be in advance. Otherwise, it's not fair, right? Then you get out and you start dealing with these problems, and nothing's ever on the test. And the tests, you never know when a test is coming to hit you. The test is what you're doing every day. The test is like this. Here's a test. Can you recognize if someone is being human trafficked? And there's no right answer. There's no easy right answer. But maybe we can train people to learn to do this over a period of time. Maybe someone could become an expert in this and kind of train people in some of the signs. Even though there's a false positive rate, a hit rate that's a mistake rate that we can't get below, maybe there's still some good things that we can do. And of course, the traffickers will adjust what they do, and as soon as you figure out one thing they do, they'll just switch it around. I mean, it's like it's too hard to get drugs across the border. I know tunnels, and now we have to go hunt the tunnels now that are crossing the border. And there's 20 tons of pot was just found in some big tunnel. But how many tunnels, more tunnels are there? And how do you? Then somebody found a submarine. Oh no, the drug traffickers are using submarines now, and so whatever you do, they'll adjust. But maybe when they adjust, maybe it'll be more expensive for them. Maybe it'll be more difficult for them. Maybe not everyone can adjust. Maybe the problem goes like this to like this. So even though they've adjusted, even though they're still escaping, you've done some good. But the point is that you have to judge yourself by a totally different standard than what you judge yourself on in school room textbook problems. You have to think systemically. You guys both are doing something that requires systems thinking. Like, what's the cause of homelessness? There's no one cause of homelessness. Mm-hmm. And how do you deal with someone who, you go like, I want to help you, homeless guy. Like, I don't need help. I'm fine. I like doing this. Like, do you really like doing this? Yes, I really do. But look, I had a girlfriend once who insisted that she was fine and everything was fine. I'm like, I know she's not. I know she's mad at me. She says she's not mad at me, but I know she is. If I get into her in a slightly different situation, or I wait a little while and come back, she'll admit that she was angry with me all the time. But she says now that she's not angry with me. That's an unsolvable problem. There's no simple solution to this. You have to feel your way through it. You have to gain skills and gain patience and gain discernment. So you've decided you're going to tackle these big problems. But what that means is you need to learn systems thinking. You need to learn how things can have 100 causes instead of one cause, for instance. And when you face that, you're going to feel like you're getting nowhere and you're going to want to give up. And I just hope what you feel like instead is you remember what I said and you go, of course it feels that way. Of course it seems like there's nothing we can do, and of course we're going to feel like we want to give up from time to time. And maybe it's a good thing to give up. It's okay to give up. I tell everyone, quit. By all means, quit anything you want to quit. But if something really is important to you, even when you quit it, there'll be a tug that pulls you back to it. And you'll want to do it again and can keep going. That's how you know something's really important, is when you try to quit, you try to say, I'm tired of this, I can't do any good. There's something in your soul that just says, okay, so we'll try something else, but you just constantly, the wind just pushes you back. The wind of your soul kind of pushes you back to do that, and then you know it's important.
That was one of my favorite parts of your book. What's in his book?
Yeah, I think I talked about that, right? And because that's one of the big problems we have in life is how do we know what should we be doing? And one of the things is just to notice when you stumble randomly. Do you notice that you keep falling in a certain direction? Do you notice that you keep bumping into a certain wall? Maybe that's your some part of you is telling you really need to go in that direction.
Stop doing it.
So I'm always drawn toward really hard problems. I'm not comfortable with easy problems. I feel something icky about problems that are easy to solve. Because it seems to me, problems that are easy to solve are like very shallow water when you're in a boat. It's too easy to run aground. It's too easy to get stuck somehow. That's what it feels like to me. I like the deep water of possibilities. I like to know that I guess what it helps me do is it helps me relax. When I'm dealing with an unsolvable problem, I go, it's okay if I didn't solve it today. I can just do a little good here and there, and that's okay, because no one can solve this problem. But then I feel like I can be in it for the long term. Whereas if it's solvable, I feel like I have to have solved this yesterday. Why didn't I solve it yesterday? I'm so terrible. So systems thinking is something a lot of people are uncomfortable with because they want a simple answer. They want simple causes. They want simple solutions. They want to say, if we just passed this law, things would be a lot better. And then the law gets passed and things don't get a lot better. That's what typically happens with a lot of legislation is laws get passed and things don't get better, because it turned out it wasn't an easy one cause kind of problem. So I would suggest reading about that if I were you, reading about systems thinking. It's an actual thing. There are books about it. general systems thinking, systems dynamics,